الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. About to continue the section titled that a section from this ummah will worship idols towards the end of times. Okay. Narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, وإنما أخاف على أمتي الأئمة المضلين وإذا وقع عليهم السيف لم يرفع إلى يوم القيامة ولا تقوم الساعة حتى يلحق حي من أمتي بالمشركين وحتى تعبد فئة من أمتي الأوثان وإنه سيكون في أمتي كذابون 30 كلهم يزعم أنه نبي وأنا خاتم النبيين لا نبي بعدي ولا تزال طائفة من أمتي على الحق منصورة لا يضرهم من خذلهم حتى يأتي أمر الله تبارك وتعالى. So the Prophet ﷺ, as was narrated in Al-Barqani, in his Sahih, the Prophet ﷺ continued, but what I fear for my ummah is deviant scholars. What I fear for my ummah is deviant scholars. And when the sword occurs between them, I mean among the Muslims, they will not be removed until the day of resurrection. So also the fact that he ﷺ mentioned deviant scholars and the sword immediately after that can insinuate that some of the reason of this sword happening among the ummah is the deviant scholars. Okay? He ﷺ said, I fear deviant scholars, and then he said the sword. So this means that they are related. So there are some scholars that actually incite certain sects among the Muslims to kill other sects, right? And the hour will not occur until a tribe from my ummah unites with the mushriks, and until a large group of my ummah worships the idols. Okay, so we wanted to talk about the scholars, the good ones and the bad ones, their impact on the ummah. Scholars are the inheritors of the prophets, as the Prophet ﷺ said. They inherited knowledge and virtue from them and left these scholars in charge of their nations to carry out the work of the prophets in calling people to Allah and enlightening them with truth, because there's going to be no more prophet after Muhammad ﷺ. So who is doing the task of prophets after him? It is the scholars, the pious scholars. He ﷺ said, the scholars are the heirs of the prophets. That means they inherit from prophets. The prophets did not leave behind dinars or dirhams, but they left behind knowledge. Whomsoever acquires this knowledge has acquired a great portion from his existence in this world. If a scholar is righteous, he will have a place of truth in the nation, and he will have a great position and status. And his influence on people will be like the influence of the sun during the day and the influence of the full moon during the dark nights. So this is what scholars do. They illuminate the path to the truth for the people. They illuminate the path to the truth for the people. The lost ones will be guided by these pious scholars, and the deviants will also be guided by them. The Prophet ﷺ praised these scholars in the hadith of Ibrahim bin Abd al-Rahman al-Azdi, who said the Prophet ﷺ said, this knowledge, that means the knowledge of the religion, will be carried by the people who are just in every generation. So every generation, the just people in that generation are the ones who are going to carry the burden of learning the knowledge and spreading it among the people. يحمل هذا العلم من كل أمة عدوله. He ﷺ called them udul. Udul, they're like the Sahaba, the ones that are just, that don't lie, and that when they speak, they are to be believed. So this knowledge will be carried by the people who are just of every generation. They will repel from this knowledge the distortions of the extremists and the fabrications of the falsifiers and the interpretations of the ignorant. This is narrated by Al-Bayhaqi and graded as authentic by Sheikh Al-Albani rahimahullah, this hadith. Imam Ahmad described the Imams of guidance and their impact on the Muslims, saying they revive the dead with the book of God. So these guided scholars revive the dead with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They enlighten the blind with it and guide those who have gone astray to the right path. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls the people that disbelieve, they are blind, they are deaf, and they are dead. All these are descriptions about the disbelievers. Why? Because this refers to their blindness to the truth, the fact they don't want to listen to the truth, and their hearts are dead because they don't have faith in them. أَوَ مَنْ كَانَ مَيْتًا فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ أَوَ مَنْ كَانَ مَيْتًا فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ. Is he who is dead, and we revived him, brought him back to life, and gave him a light by which he goes through people. So this is the death of the heart. Okay, because what is the difference between human beings and animals is the soul, the ruh. Okay, animals, they eat, they sleep, they fornicate, and they die. Human beings do the same thing, but there is an additional thing for humans, and that's the soul, that's the belief. That's believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, مَنْ عَمِلَ صَالِحًا مِنْ ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنْثَى وَهُوَ مُؤْمِنٌ فَلَنُحْيِيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبًا. Whomever does good deed while he is a believer, he is monotheistic believer in Allah, that means doesn't believe that Allah exists and he worships other ones. Believer meaning we're believing in Allah only and worshiping Allah only. And whether he's a male or a female, then we shall make him live a good life. So, and Allah is using the word hayat in this ayah, hayat. In another ayah, we're going to see Allah is using ma'isha. وَمَنْ أَعْرَضَ عَنْ ذِكْرِي فَإِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا. And he who is astray from my path, he's going to have a difficult ma'isha. Allah did not call it hayat. So what's the difference between hayat and ma'isha? Ma'isha, like the animals. The animals, they have ma'isha. They eat, they sleep, they procreate, and they die. Hayat is additional to ma'isha by having the heart, the faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls those that don't believe in Him as dead. Why? Because their hearts are dead. They're not physically dead, but the heart is dead. He also calls them blind because even though they have eyes. قال ربي لما حشرتني أعمى وقد كنت بصيرا قال كذلك أتتك آياتنا فنسيتها وكذلك اليوم تنسى. They were blind to the truth. They had eyes, but they couldn't see the truth. They had ears, but they didn't want to or couldn't listen to the truth. So Allah is using these adjectives to describe those that live without faith in this world. So Imam Ahmad continues, how many of those killed by shaitan have these good scholars revived, and how many of those who have gone astray have they guided? Okay, they are the lamps of the ummah's darkness and the light of its guidance. And this is the reason why usually the pious scholars on the truth, you see them being persecuted by the rulers. You see them persecuted by the rulers, tortured. Why? Because the rulers are usually they're in it for dunya, and many times they want these scholars to give fatwa that pleases these salatin. But like Imam Ahmad did not want to do that. He was tortured. Imam Malik did not want to do that. He was tortured. Abu Hanifa did not want to do that. He was jailed. Ibn Taymiyyah did not want to do that. He was jailed. Many scholars today in Saudi Arabia, thousands of them, did not want to go along with the disbelief that was brought into the blessed land of Haramain. They are in jails. Many major scholars. Tarifi, Munajjid, other ones. So this is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts these scholars to test. So don't think that being a scholar is an easy thing. Being a scholar is not an easy thing, because Allah will surely put you to test so that He can show whether you are truly believing in what you are preaching or you are only doing it outwardly so that you can get famous and have this nickname of Shaykh among the people. Okay, so we have to understand that with this lofty rank that Allah has given these scholars in this dunya, Allah has given them the biggest trials, because the Prophet ﷺ said, the people that go through the biggest trial are the prophets, and then the ones that are closer to them in faith. Prophets are usually the ones that are given the biggest trials. Okay, because you are tried according to your faith. لا نكلف نفسا إلا وسعها لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, another ayah. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests everyone in accordance with his faith. But since scholars hold this lofty position and have a transcendent impact on the population. The deviation of scholars is a calamity that strikes Muslims to the core and leads groups of them into misguidance. So the same way that the scholars have a high esteem and a high status, if they are to be misguided, then there are a calamity on this ummah because they're going to misguide masses with them. History has witnessed such groups, and no nation has been spared these misguided scholars. Allah tests His servants through these deviant scholars. So you're going to ask me, well, he is a scholar, how am I going to know that he is wrong? The point that I just made yesterday. Listening to the scholar should not be your only way of worshiping Allah. You always have to start by understanding the Quran and the Sunnah. Not only reading the Quran, but understanding it. Because when you have a basic understanding of the Quran and Sunnah, if someone says something that goes against the Quran and Sunnah, you're going to say, hang on a second. What this person is saying goes against the Quran and Sunnah. Because the truth is not known through people. It is people who are known through the truth. الحق لا يعرف بالرجال إنما الرجال يعرفون بالحق. What does this mean? Meaning you have to know what the truth is. How? Your basic thing is what? The Quran and the Sunnah. At least you have to have some basic understanding of the Quran. Okay, that's why we should not leave the Quran to the side. And then when you listen to the scholars, if the scholars tell the truth, then these scholars are known as truthful scholars. But we don't know the truth through the scholars, meaning not everything that the scholar says is true. You understand the difference? So the truth is not recognized through the scholars. The scholars are recognized through the truth. If the scholar is saying something that's in accordance to the Quran and Sunnah, you say the scholar is on the truth. Okay? That's why we have examples from today's times. Okay? Let's talk about the one that talked about the Mujahideen in Palestine and says, Jahidhum bis-sunnah ya Aba Ubaidah. He said, make jihad against the Jews with the Sunnah, or Abu Ubaidah. This person is from the Madakhila. The Madakhila, basically they worship the Wali al-Amr or Wali al-Khamr, even if he is a kafir. Like Paul Brennan, when the US invaded Iraq, they said that Paul Brennan is Wali al-Amr and you have to listen to him. He's an American, so he's an American, he's Wali al-Amr. And then they say it's one of them in Egypt called Raslan, also from the Madakhil. He says it's haram to revolt against Wali al-Amr, except if he is from Ikhwan Muslimin. He said it's haram to revolt against Wali al-Amr, even if he's a kafir. But if he's from Ikhwan Muslimin, you must revolt against him. Doesn't make sense, right? Doesn't make sense. So when the person says Jahidhum bis-sunnah, makes jihad against the Jews with the Sunnah, what does he mean? What does he mean? He means put down your weapons. Now, is fighting jihad Sunnah or not Sunnah? So maybe this person needs to go back and study Islam 101. He does not know what Islam is, right? He thinks that Sunnah is just sitting in the masajid. By the way, these people, they're destroying your masajid, so you can't even do the Sunnah there. So as a sheikh was asked, how do we know if this person is saying is true or not? We go back to the Quran. What does Allah say in the Quran? It says, قاتلوا في سبيل الله وأعدوا لهم ما استطعتم من قوة ومن رباط الخيل قاتلوا الذين يقاتلونكم يا أيها الذين آمنوا قاتلوا المشركين كافة وليجدوا فيكم غلظة. So Allah is telling me this in the Quran, this person is telling me don't do that. So here I'm going to recognize that this person is not on the truth because he's going against the authentic and ayat that are muhkama, they're not mutashabiha, ayat that are clear cut in the Quran. So am I going to say this person because he is a scholar, oh, I have to listen to the scholar because Allah says فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ means fatwa. If you don't know something halal or haram, you go ask Ahl al-Dhikr. Doesn't mean worship them, otherwise we're going to fall into what the Jews and Christians did before, which is what? Worshipping their scholars. Their scholars told them something is haram, Allah says it's halal, and they obeyed them. Their scholars tell them something is halal, and Allah says it's haram, and these people follow the scholars. And this is the explanation of the ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله, as we saw before. Adi ibn Hatim radiallahu anhu was a Christian, and he asked the Prophet sallallahu about this ayah. He said we used to not worship these priests and monks, but the Prophet sallallahu explained to him what worshiping them means, meaning following them when they tell you something is halal when Allah says it's haram, and vice versa. Okay, so if a person tells you fight against them with the sunnah, you says yes, the sunnah is when somebody is fighting you, you have to fight back against him. This is This is a sunnah, this is in the Quran, this is what the Prophet ﷺ, did. Also, when they tell you, for example, now, I'm concentrating on this issue because this is the issue that the Ummah is facing today. They tell you Hamas is wrong because they are seeking help from Iran. And Iran is Shia. Okay, so you're telling me that Shia, by the way, according to Ibn Mubarak, the earlier scholar, is one of the 4 major deviant sects from which 72 sects will form. The 4 deviant sects, according to Ibn Mubarak, are Shia, Al-Qadariyya, Al-Murji'a, and Al-Khawarij. Okay, but these are still Muslims according to the true scholars. Okay, not to the American turbans. So you tell me that the Mujahideen who are being killed and all the countries of the world are gathering against them, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tawbah. In Surah At-Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ بَعْضٍ إلا تفعلوه تكن فتنة في الأرض وفساد كبير وقاتلوا المشركين كافة كما يقاتلونكم كافة. Allah says, fight against the mushriks together in unison the same way they fight against you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the disbelievers, they are awliya of one another. If you don't do that, there's going to be fitna. So, okay. So Iran is a Shia, it's a deviant sect. They have some deviance. Deviant doesn't mean they deviate in everything. It means there are some things that deviated in. Just like the Sunnis. Sunnis deviate in many things, but they're still Sunnis, right? Okay, so we go back to the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. Let's not even talk about what about Saudi Arabia taking the US as an ally. The US is a disbeliever nation, right? So which one is worse, a disbeliever or a deviant Muslim? Of course, disbeliever is worse, right? And not only Saudi Arabia, I don't pick on Saudi Arabia alone, but because they used to be the light for this ummah, subhanallah. All these English books and everything, subhanallah, came from them at a certain point. And now, subhanallah, they just switched course 180 degrees, and it's one of the biggest fitna of this time. But like I said, all the other countries, they are taking disbelievers as allies, not only deviant Muslims. Okay, so again, we go back to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. When he ﷺ emigrated to Medina, who did he make pact with? He made pact with the Jews, who are disbelievers, right? The enemies of Islam. He still made pact with them until they decided to betray the Muslims, and then he broke the path because they betrayed the Muslims. He also ﷺ made a pact with the tribe of Khuza'a. Khuza'a was a mushrik tribe that used to worship angels. And he ﷺ, the Prophet, made a pact of alliance with them against Quraysh. So there are disbelievers, but the Quraysh are bigger disbelievers because they are killing the Muslims, right? So if you look at the seerah, you say that whomever is saying that this allegiance is wrong, he is wrong, because the sunnah tells us that the Prophet ﷺ, who is our role model, did that. Okay? So that's why we have to always go back to the Quran, to the sunnah, especially the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. One of the best books is by Sheikh Mubarak Furi, Rahiq al-Makhtoum. SubhanAllah, he was from India, but he's, SubhanAllah, one of the major scholars. And SubhanAllah, the weird things that throughout history, major scholars are not Arabs, except a few. Major scholars, you name them. At-Tirmidhi, Bukhari, Muslim, SubhanAllah. Because this tells you this religion doesn't belong to a certain people. This religion belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if you want the truth, if you want to serve Allah, Allah will choose you to do that. Okay? We don't, even though it was revealed on the Arabs, and the Arab is the best race according to the Prophet ﷺ, because he was chosen from the Arabs, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selects people from different backgrounds to lead the path in this religion. So therefore, if you hear things like this and you have some background reference in the seerah, you will know that whoever is saying this is giving you a political fatwa, not a shari'i fatwa. Because if someone is trying to kill you and your neighbor is a disbeliever, are you allowed to ask your disbeliever neighbor to help you push away this person who's going to kill you? Yes or no? Of course the answer is yes. So similarly, if you can apply that on yourself as a person, you can apply on the Palestinian population. So this is just an example. We don't want to pick too much on this deviant sect, but this is just an example, and that's why we have to have some basis, some basic knowledge in the religion before we can be able to decide whether this scholar is good, this scholar. Also, subhanAllah, the latest shock is Okay, let's not even go there. I'm not even going to mention names, but subhanallah, because it's become a big fitna. It's become a big fitna where people that millions of people are following are listening to, all of a sudden they make a U-turn and they start talking politically instead of talking from a Sharia standpoint. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us that these Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informed us of an example of these misguided scholars among the people of the children of Israel, and his name is Bal'am bin Ba'ura. He is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed ayah 34 in Surah Tawbah, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إن تحمل عليه يلهث أو تتركه يلهث. You know, it's like واتلو عليهم نبأ الذي آتيناه آياتنا فانسلخ منها. Recite to them the news of the person whom we have given our ayat, but then he left it. فأتبعه الشيطان. So shaitan followed him. Shaitan found an opportunity. This person was a good worshipper, and all of a sudden he deviated. So shaitan basically saw his opportunity, so he followed it. فأتبعه الشيطان فكان من الغاوين. So he misguided him. So he was among the scholars of the children of Israel, and his dua was answered. And then when Musa alayhi salam and the children of Israel laid siege on a town of disbelievers, they pressed Bal'am bin Ba'ura to make dua against Musa alayhi salam, so that he does not conquer them. And he resisted at first, but then finally he tried to make dua against Musa alayhi salam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala caused his tongue, took him out of his mouth, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed him after being blessed. And if as we always say, we talk about the children of Israel, we have said before, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose them at that point? وَلَقَدْ فَضَّلْنَاهُمْ عَلَى عِلْمٍ الْعَالَمِينَ. Allah chose them above the rest of the mankind at their time, because they were the first nation to wage jihad for the sake of Allah. Because before them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would always destroy the disbelievers, like Ad, Thamud, Nuh, and even Fir'aun. So the prophets were told to call their ummah to the truth. When the ummah disbelieved, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed that ummah. Like what happened to Ad, Thamud, okay, as examples. But the Jews were the first ones to be ordered to fight jihad with Musa alayhi salam and fight against the Amaleeks, as they are named in the Torah, who are the original Palestinian inhabitants of Palestine. But at that point, they used to be statue worshippers, idolaters. But now it's the opposite. Now it's us who are waging war against them, because they are the mushriks and we are on the truth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a sunnah in this earth, because some people ask the question is, why do we always have to fight? Why can't we live in peace? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he sent Adam alayhi salam and shaitan and Hawa to this earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a decision. He said, بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ عَدُوٌّ. You're going to be enemies of one another. So therefore, don't expect to live in peace in this earth until Isa alayhi salam comes, and then the only religion in this world will be Islam. But other than that, it's always going to be fighting, because truth is spread through fighting, and disbelief and falsehood is also spread through fighting. Okay, so it's not only truth that's spread through sword; it's the opposite. If the people on the truth stop fighting, this doesn't mean that there's going to be peace. No, it's the disbelievers who are going to start attacking. This is what's happening today. What's happening in Muslims today? They're not fighting back. They're too weak. They're too rested in this dunya. So it's the other disbelievers who are spreading corruption and disbelief through the sword. Okay, either you accept our McDonald's, or we send you our McDougal's. Okay, accept our way of life, democracy, no rule with Allah's law, zina in your country, alcohol, drugs. Otherwise, we're gonna do a regime change. So through force. So force is the only thing that achieves things, not the only thing, but it's mostly the thing that achieves results in this earth. Because this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said it, as we said, and also Allah says in Surah Al-Hadid, وَأَنزَلْنَا الْحَدِيدَ فِيهِ بَأْسٌ شَدِيد. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He has revealed, He has brought down the iron to this earth, so that Allah وَلِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ مَنْ يَخَافُ فِي الْغَيْبِ, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can see who fears Him and who fights jihad for His sake. So this is something that's going to happen, and it's going to keep on happening. So don't start thinking these questions, and if someone tells you why Islam was spread through sword, tell them so was falsehood. Islam was spread through sword mostly, but so was falsehood. And I personally thank Allah that Islam was spread spread through sword, to come all the way to the country that I'm from, which is the westernmost of Africa. So, because the people that used to be there wanted their country to be to them, for their idol worship to remain there, so that they can do what? So that they can take advantage of the people of that country. The same way that's being done today. So we're back to history. No more ruling with Allah's law, no more true Islam. So the people ruling those countries are taking advantage of the people. So there are different methods of obstructing guidance. Number one, not acting upon the knowledge of these scholars. So these scholars may have knowledge, but they do not act upon it. That's why Thawri said, okay, so I lost the page. Okay. All right. There you go. Okay. The Thawri said, knowledge is only learned so that one may fear Allah through it. He also said, adorn knowledge, but do not adorn yourselves with it. So do not use knowledge as a means for you to get famous. Ubay ibn Ka'b said, learn knowledge and act upon it, and do not learn it to adorn yourselves with it. Okay, so the number one type of misguidance, there are three. One is to not act upon the knowledge that you learn. Okay. Okay. The other thing is to hide the truth. Hide the truth. So you know the truth and hide it. And number three is to misinterpret the truth. So you take an ayah or hadith and you misinterpret it to serve your purposes. And he ﷺ said that this fitna of deviant scholars is actually bigger than the fitna of the Dajjal. So the fitna of the deviant scholars is bigger than the fitna of the Dajjal. And as we know, the fitna of the Dajjal is the biggest fitna that existed throughout history. So the Prophet ﷺ informed us that the trial of the Antichrist, that means the Dajjal, would be the greatest trial to befall humanity from the creation of Adam until Day of Judgment. So what makes the trial of these misguided imams greater than the trial of the Antichrist? Scholars have said the reason for this is that the Antichrist possesses signs that make him recognizable to every Muslim. He is one-eyed, and the word disbeliever is written on his forehead. Every believer will be able to read that, even if the believer is illiterate. Okay? And then anyone who has the slightest insight will figure out if this is Allah, he could at least fix himself. He could at least give himself two full eyes. He only has one eye. He only has one eye and claims that he is Allah. Give yourself two eyes to begin with, right? As for the hypocrites among these deviant scholars, their harm is greater and their danger is greater, because they deceive people in the name of the religion. They deceive people in the name of religion, distorting the book of Allah and His verses. They exploit the fact that they have greater power over people. They speak in the name of religion, and people are naturally inclined towards their religion and under the influence of their faith. Because people, they love the religion. They want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so when scholars talks, they try to appease Allah and please Allah through these scholars. And that's why their fitna is great. And Ibn Mubarak said, has anyone corrupted the religion except kings and their evil rabbis and monks? So kings, evil rabbis and monks, we call them ulama al-balat or ulama al-salatin, scholars of the castle. These are the ones that corrupted the religion more than anyone else. So we'll stop here inshallah today. If you have any questions, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is comparing to today's world and comparing to 1,400 years ago. Is it logic the Muslims can fight back today? You know, because the way we see, for example, we see our brothers Palestinians what's happening. Right beside them is Egypt, one of the most powerful in the Muslim world. But if they try to help them, we know only one nuclear bomb that Israel threw out. You know, Egypt will be history. And same on every other Muslim countries, the same. So we see groups, Muslim groups who are fighting here and there. We call it Mujahideen or whatever we call it. And the last 30 or 40 years, there's certain groups, not as today, but the only success is Afghanistan.
Okay. So
And yet the Afghanistan today, even though the American left it, the Russia left it before, but still, within that Taliban, there's another group, I don't know what's called, Al-Qaeda or whatever, they're killing their people again.
Mm.
So, I don't know. The Muslims are confused and they're weak.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't see any scenario they can fight back today.
You just gave us one,
Yeah.
a successful one. You gave us a successful scenario, right?
Yeah.
So don't tell me you can't see. That's the only scenario. Let me tell you why. Whether you fight back or you don't fight back, you will be killed. Okay? Like you said, the Taliban. How many years did they fight against Russia? 8 years?
Yeah,
Huh?
kind of.
20 against the US. 8 against Russia. How many millions of people died? Millions of people died in Afghanistan, right? What was the stance of the Muslim scholars at the time? Did they tell them, lay down your weapons, Russia is a major country, don't fight back? Or what did the Sunni scholars say back then?
Fight.
Fight for sake. Jihad. And then when America invaded, oh, you're too weak. Just lay down your weapons. No, you can't do it. It's a nuclear power. They're going to do this. Did they do anything? They ran away with Allah's help. Because my brother, victory does not come from numbers or weapons. It comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these brothers sacrificed millions of people and they have established an emirate ruling with Allah's law. Okay, they may be the only ones today that are ruling according to Allah's law. As you said, there are some fringes that try to cause fitna within the country, and these fringes may be supported by outside powers, because when shaitan cannot fight against you directly, he's going to try to send his dogs on you from the side. So therefore, what you said is true. That is the model. You have to fight back, okay? Because if you don't fight back, you're going to be killed anyway. And let's give another example. Let's look at Palestine today, okay? Hamas is actually the rightful group governing the Palestinians. They won in elections. You have to understand that. Hamas won in elections, okay? So did another group in Algeria called the FIS, Islamist. But the kuffar, they tell you, use democracy, but then when those that are against us come to rule, this is too much democracy, we don't want it. So in Algeria, they gave money and weapons to the army. They started killing people because they did not want these Muslims to rule the Muslims and be strong enough and establish Allah's law and do what's good for the people. They wanted to take advantage of the people. In Palestine, Hamas won the elections. So of course the West is not going to accept Hamas as the leader. So therefore they said no more democracy in this case. Okay? Use